Well, better late than never, eh, gamers? They did say early April, but I guess it being April and April Fools and everything, we can give them a pass on that one. Today we're going to have a look at little mentions of some of the things we can expect in this update 4.0. Later on we're going to take a look at these map changes that were mentioned earlier this month. We'll get back to that in a minute, but for now let's have a look at this post by Kevin Johnson. So I've popped it up on the screen now. So update 4.0 for Battlefield 2042 is set to go live next week, with the patch notes going live at the start of that week too. There are over 400 individual fixes, bugs and quality of life improvements to go through next week. So he then goes on to say about some of the key elements of that. Now, we already know about the end of round scoreboard and the squad chat or voice over IP, but he does go over some more detail. So firstly, we'll just say obviously the full patch notes aren't out just yet, but I will make another video to cover those at the time of release. There's over 400 plus changes in total, so that's going to be quite lengthy, I reckon. Now, the key bits here. Operators Rao and Pike are getting updated traits. I reckon it's probably going to be a bit of a buff for those two, seeing as they seem to be underused at the moment. Next up, we got Sundance's grenades, specifically the anti-tank grenades, are getting tweaked so that they target vehicles a bit more smartly. If you've used Sundance at all, you know, throw one of those grenades and it goes up into the sky, never to be seen again. 99 times out of 100, so it'd be good to see those working better than they are at the moment. Next up, we got the ribbons, easier to unlock, so I guess they're just going to bring down the point requirements, etc. for those. Also, XP for support and team play actions is going to be improved. It does actually say rebalanced, so whether they mean they're going to be reducing the points for some, I don't know, but I think it's probably going to be more of a buff for those. Next up, we've got the vehicle warfare balancing, so that's just tweaks and changes to some of the vehicles to make it a bit more balanced in terms of infantry versus vehicles. We've got the bug fixes. Specifically, they mention the aim down sight bug, so that's when you get out of a vehicle and you can only hip fire. And also the revive bug that keeps popping its head back up again. Hopefully it'll be for good this time. Fingers crossed, eh? And then finally, a big attachments overhaul. So at the moment, most of the attachments, you know, for example, let's take the barrel attachments. You've got the different compensators. Most of them kind of seem like they do the same thing. There's not really much difference between them. With this change, they hope to spread it out a bit so that there's a bit more difference between them, making it a better choice for the player to choose one over the other. So obviously there's going to be a lot more than that in the patch notes. Hopefully that's going to be coming out on Monday, so I can take a good look at that and go over it in detail for you guys, so stay tuned for that one. In the meantime, for the rest of this video, we're going to have a look at these map changes they've announced. Earlier this month they talked about them, and it's coming for Season 1 apparently. Let's take a look at that now. So, starting on March 2nd, the devs started collecting player feedback on maps. In the article, Freeman shares the top points that they have learned, the next steps they are taking, and a timeline for when to expect these changes. The first key point is Traversal. The time spent on foot moving from spawn to the nearest flag is a little, shall we say, extreme. To resolve this, they have decided to move them closer together. And you can see in these images from the article how the revised maps would look. Additionally, they are looking into making some changes to the vehicle selection pool to increase the availability of transport vehicles. So basically what they talk about here is switching out the MAV and the Bolty, you know, putting the MAV into the transport vehicles pool, putting the Bolty into the attack vehicles pool, and vice versa on the helicopters, taking the Nightbird and putting it in the attack. So we'll just have the large transport helicopters, whether it's the Hind or the Osprey, those will be just on their own in the category, making it more likely for people to pick those vehicles, hopefully. And he goes on to talk about cover and line of sight. The lack of cover between and even sometimes around objectives was another key point, and in response to this they say that they will be adding more cover as well as changing the elevation level on certain terrain. And we can see here a few examples of just that. Elevation, as we see here, was done to perfection in Battlefield 1 in my opinion. It just gives so many flanking opportunities, so of course I hope they can pull this off in 2042 as well. Immersion was also an issue, with many maps looking far too pristine, so there will be lots of fortifications added to certain areas to give a battle ready feel. It will be interesting to see how this changes things up. Next up we got a little section about intensity, and this is focused on vehicle dominance in the 128 player modes. To address this they decided to go from 3 to 2 with the attack vehicles, so that's attack air vehicles and attack ground vehicles. So you know, instead of 3 tanks and 3 helicopters for example, you'd have 2 tanks and 2 helicopters, meaning less vehicle dominance overall. They've also decided to increase the vehicle cooldowns from 60 to 120 seconds, that's double the respawn time. And on top of that they are also considering some other changes, but I won't go over those yet as these are just speculative. On to the next part, and that is about paths. Now this is to do with how some areas of the map just seem to have no purpose at all. For example, you can see here the distribution centre on renewal. They are considering removing this completely as it's kind of well out of the way. So don't know how I feel about that one, but we'll have to see what happens. And then just in general, making sure the cover lines up so that there's a clear pathway for players between the objectives. And finally, they leave a timescale of when we can expect these. The vehicle changes are coming in the April update next week. Map changes, at least to Kaleidoscope and Renewal, are coming in Season 1, with the others being worked on during Season 1 and then implemented for Season 2. Now, the next core feedback is due to start soon, and this is covering specialists. So if you want to have your say on the specialists, make sure to go to that, have your say. Just focus on what you do want rather than what you don't, give them the feedback, and based on that they will make the changes, hopefully, that we all want to see. What do you guys think about these updates? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, guys.
Our defeat is inevitable here, but we can endure this loss.